Hello, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, everyone, this is the panel that the entire conference has been waiting for. We have some great panelists with us today. It's the New Adult panel, The Lost Age, How New Adult Thrives Outside of Traditional Publishing. I'm your moderator, Debra Goelz. I am Brittany Charmentine on Wattpad, and these are our fine panelists, Anna, AJ, and MB. Welcome, you guys. So happy to have you here. We're going to have 4 questions for the panelists, and then if we still have time, we're going to move into your questions in the Q&A. So drop your questions there in the Q&A chat if you have them. Just a quick reminder before we get started, we're doing a giveaway of 100 Wattpad coins, good for paid stories. All you have to do is comment "We Thrive" together with your Wattpad handle in the chat, and we will announce the winner at the end in the reception chat. So good luck to everyone. We've had quite a few winners already. So okay, let's dive in. Our first question I'll direct to AJ, and it's kind of a basic one, but important. What exactly is New Adult?
Yeah, thanks, Deb. This is such a good question because that I've especially been asked recently, and I think New Adult covers anything from like co-ed college dorms to first jobs at ad agencies where hopefully your boss is a billionaire, and to like stories about what happened next in life. So you graduated or you didn't graduate from high school, and now what happens? That's the realm in the heart of New Adult fiction.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. I would say like it's about like 18. It can span up to 18 to 30, 18 to 25. This is where stuff that doesn't fit into YA goes, and it's a lot more mature and very raw real life situations. But it's a fun genre to be in.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's that 18 to 25-year-old gap where you're no longer really young adult anymore, but you're not that adult yet. So everything is new. And it's definitely like a turning point in your characters' lives as well. So it gives the readers an opportunity to read a story where they're exploring themselves and they're, trying to decide who they are, whether it is a contemporary or a fantasy or any other genre. It's an age group that definitely is exploratory.
Lots of changes happening at that time of life. Well, that actually brings us into the second question very nicely. And it's about the fact that New Adult isn't really a genre. It's an age group. Why isn't New Adult considered an age group in traditional publishing? Can you start us off, MB?
So a while ago, I don't even know how long, but definitely wasn't given enough of a chance. Traditional publishing tried it, or at least they say they tried it, and they didn't know what to do with it. At the end of the day, it's a marketing standard. And that's why these days you're finding these young adult books with content warnings on them because traditional marketplace doesn't know where to put them. They want the YA audience, but these books should technically be closer to adult. But because they didn't give the new adult age group a chance, whether it was because they didn't want to sacrifice, shelf space in the brick and mortar stores, or they didn't want to put the money towards having to find a new audience for this, uncertain age group, they kind of gave it up. And that's why it's so hard to place a lot of these upper YA books because the content is beyond, young adult, but isn't exactly to that adult standard to a point. And so it's really on traditional publishing for not giving it enough of a chance.
Yeah. I also think it wasn't well defined for a while. Like we did not know that New Adult even existed as its own age range or genre. So there was a period of time where you went from like high school books, and then I guess we just skip college altogether. Like that doesn't exist in the book world, even though it's very prevalent in real life. And I think that it's turning around now because we've realized there's such a high demand for these stories that aren't really being told from this age range. And I'm so excited because it is the best to read, in my opinion. But yeah, I truly think it just wasn't defined for a while. People did not know it existed.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point, Anna. Like when I first started writing, which granted was just like a couple of years ago, my immediate thought was that I would write about a college student. And when I started getting involved into the writing community and I started realizing like what I wanted to write wasn't even a thing, like it was either age it down or age it up. And I was so confused. I was like, how come I can't tell a story about a college student? Like that doesn't seem to make sense. And then I dived in and started reading YA fiction like pretty prolifically. It's like all I read, like in traditional published fiction. And like, I mean, I remember like the age ranges for 13-year-olds, like I have a 13-year-old, can pick up some of these books and there's like full on page explicit scenes. And I'm like, I don't think this, like there's clearly a need for like a section in either the library or the like bookstores where people can access these stories, but they're not marketed to children.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. You know, when I started writing, I started writing. I writing what I kind of knew, what I was comfortable with. And it turned out to be that new age, you know, bracket. But at the same time, I'm like, how do I label this in a traditional publishing world? So then you try to play the system, like, is it, you know, crossover YA, or is it upper YA, or, you know, college YA, which apparently seems to be more acceptable than actually calling anything new adult. Because the minute you do that, you know, traditional publishing looks at it like, okay, well, we got to fix this. Like it's a problem.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense. I think a lot of the books that are out in the world right now that are labeled as maybe a more mature YA are just like misgenred. Like they should not even be labeled as a YA at all. And there needs to be those categories for these books so people know what to look for, because YA is such a broad like range of books. And if you can like section it off a little bit more, then people know where to look for content.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I see like at Barnes and Noble, I always joke that they have the book talk table. And it's all like smut and like new adult stories. And it's like encouraging that they're like trying to make a space for it. And they're like, we don't really know what to do with these. Here's a table.
I will say there was something, I know there was something actually on Twitter circulating a couple of weeks ago that someone actually did walk into a Barnes and Noble and they actually had made on their own a new adult section of the YA shelf. And it circulated around for a little bit and it made my heart so happy. Obviously you could tell like it was a written sign that said new adult across it. But the people in that bookstore realized that this needed to be done. And, you know, it's like that kind of stuff that you're like, obviously it's not just us who realize it. There are other people in this world that understand that this is something that needs to be more social, more accepted.
Definitely.
Well, I hope publishing is listening.
Hello.
I know, right?
And I know Wattpad is, because it is very prevalent on Wattpad and very popular. So I have another question for y'all. We'll start with Anna this time. What kind of storylines and themes do you think belong in new adult?
So I am at that prime age right now. I'm 20, so I'm smack dab in the beginning of new adult, I guess you could say. And I absolutely adore the college stories. I feel like college is a scary time. It's like this weird limbo between childhood and adulthood, like before you get thrown to the sharks. And a lot of times people don't know what to expect. Like when you graduate high school, it's very, very bittersweet and scary. And I see a lot of people DM me all the time asking like, what is college like? Like, what is life like beyond high school? And I think that these new adult books can answer a lot of those questions for people, even if they're, you know, fictional. I wish they weren't. Like, where's the CEO in college? But they can answer a lot of questions for people and show these real life scenarios where you're finding your footing, you're moving away from home, you're finding yourself, and you're really learning to just live with yourself contently, because in the end of the day, you're all you got. So that's my spiel about new adult. But yeah, does anyone want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Anna, you make such a good point, and I love that you bring such a fresh perspective, like a Gen Z. Like I'm in Gen Z, I'm writing new adult fiction. Like that's awesome. Like for us, like older folks that like have to reach back and remember our time, like what it was like to be a young person, and like, but like especially when you get older, you get like a little bit nostalgic for that time. Like I've always wanted to write like college stories about that time in my life. Like I thought that's just like a fabulous way to like look back. And but I think like what belongs in New A is like all the diverse, messy experiences that take place post high school. Like once you're free of your folks' house, right, you can kind of like search and figure out like, who am I? Like, where do I belong? And maybe you're breaking up with high school sweethearts. Like, I love seeing like this character growth where like people maybe I don't know if you've watched Sex Life, but maybe you fall into like the Brads of the world, like you're dating these like more dangerous, like more risky guys. And that's like a great like that's always like a fun plot point, like finding this like new like I don't know, more fun, more dark area in your life now that you're away from your parents. So I love reading and like writing about like the parties, the best friends, and like losing friends and gaining friends, and like also the pain and the disappointment and like how strongly you feel during these times when like everything is changing. And sometimes it's a little overwhelming.
Definitely.
So yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, granted, I don't write contemporary. I come at it from more of a fantasy standpoint, but I still incorporate those same ideals. Like it's a turning point in your main character's life, whether they need to go off somewhere to learn a new skill, or whether they need to, you know, leave home for some adventure. It's that point in their life where they leave their childhood life behind them and they move forward to find themselves as a person. You know, whether it's, you know, a battle to fight, or, you know, magic to learn, or, you know, a companion that you meet and you hate them and then you love them, because who doesn't like enemies to lovers? But it's that whole growth, you know, that personal growth, that whether you're in college or you're, you know, storming a castle or something along those lines, that the characters go through as literally a new adult. And that's where I at least come from in my writing, is because, you know, and like AJ said, it's raw, you know, it's exploratory, it's experimental, you know, there's so much more in it than, you know, the comfort that they used to have, you know, at home, you know, and trying to find themselves in this world, in this society, where they can, you know, start creating their own sense of self.
Yeah, I think a lot of that in between, like that age range, 80 what? 18. Whoa, that's a different
Old
group.
adult.
25 is there's a lot of stuff we don't talk about that these people go through mentally, and sometimes I feel like even now I'm alone with my thoughts whenever I get like super depressed and I'm sitting in my apartment by myself, and some of these inner like turmoil I go through. And it's really nice to read other experiences and know that I'm not alone, and to know that like we're all in the same boat. Like all of us are going through the same thing. We don't know what we want to do in life, or if we do, we aren't like, are we solid in what we want to do after college, or even not after? It doesn't have to be college. New adult can be beyond, or not beyond college, but yeah, beyond college and trade school, working straight out of high school. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be college. But there's a lot of turmoil we go through, and a lot of growth, and a lot of finding your footing, and like relearning everything that we've been told we're going to relearn, but you can't tell someone that until they're going through it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love New Adult. It's so raw.
Well, I mean, that's really why we read, right? Is because we want to see people like us on the page, that you confirm that, you know, it's not just us. We're not alone. So, all right. Well, the last question we have from us is a two-parter, and it is as follows. How do you write a successful NA story? And in your opinion, what is the most important element of an NA story? AJ, you want to take this one?
Sure. So I almost exclusively, like, whether I'm writing paranormal or contemporary, it's always set for me in a new adult age range. And I don't know, how do you write a successful story? I think that the key element is passion. So I talked a little bit about this at my meet and greet yesterday, if you were there, so you got a sneak peek. But I really think that, like, characters in their early 20s are just so passionate about everything, like the things they love, the things they hate, the things that hurt them growing up, the people who hurt them, the past traumas they had, the chips on their shoulder, like the need to prove themselves, like their aspirations and hopes for the future. It's all so passionate. Like, now in my 30s, I'm like very reflective and very tired, right? So but I remember, like, being so passionate about everything. And so I just, like, I think that one of the most beautiful things about writing of that age group is, like, letting your characters be obsessed with that passion and the future, and, like, are they doing the adulting right? And, like, am I grown enough? Like, how much should I rely on my parents? And I think the cool thing about writing it is that that answer is going to be different for every character, right? Whether it's a, like, 21-year-old college student who, like, just found out that he has magic, or, like, like somebody who's going through, like, a serious medical diagnosis for the first time and being young, and, like, what does that mean to them? So I think there's room for you to really explore in depth these character questions, these deep character questions that you don't really get to experience in, like, YA space.
MB?
So I'm almost 40 and I still don't think I have the adulting down. So it's, but very similar to what AJ said, in addition to the passion, you need that vulnerability. I think the characters need to be uncertain about what life holds ahead of them. And when I write my NA characters, they're flawed. No one's perfect. No one knows what they're doing. They think they do. I mean, and that, they're arrogant, and they're, what's the word I'm looking for? They're compulsive, and they are, thinking that they know the world that they're, exploring, but, generally a harsh reality, will eventually hit them, across the head. And so I think that in my stories is a huge addition, because, you can't have a perfect main character. Everyone has to have a flaw. Everyone has to have a down and an up. And I think new adult is definitely the perfect age range to explore so much of that.
Yeah. I know that growth is something that needs to be in all books to, like, farther plot, but I really, really think it's pertinent in new adult, because this is the time where we can mess up without our parents' supervision. This is the time that we can make mistakes and learn from them. So I think that is so important. And again, it shows the relatableness that everyone makes mistakes, and you just have to learn from them and move on. And then you get to that next step and you're like, okay, I can do this. I can go into adulthood fine. Do we? Fingers crossed. Nervous, but we're getting there. But it's all about making mistakes and learning from them and growing. That's, for me, what I need to see in a new adult book.
Okay, well, it turns out that the questions are coming in hot and heavy.
I bet they are.
Yay!
Hot and heavy.
Yes.
Our first question is, do you think new adult can be considered new adult without sex scenes? Do you think new adult without sex scenes can be as successful as those with them? Like, do you think that that's a promise to the reader when they see something's new adult?
Absolutely.
I see you shaking your head like crazy, MB.
So one of the things that gives new adult such a negative connotation is because when traditional publishing started it was all abs and insinuated that it was new adult with erotica, and it's just so wrong. Yes, there may be new adult stories that do have, not so much a fade to black sex scene in it, because again, like we said already, these characters are exploring themselves, and sex is just as much a part of that as growing. Does a new adult story need to have sex? Absolutely not. Like, you know, Anna said as well, you know, it's growing, it's living. I mean, you know, not everyone leaves their parents' house and immediately starts having sex with everyone they see. I mean, I didn't. I'm not a judge.
And if you do, it's okay. But
it's okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, you know,
Be safe though.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm a mom.
But I think that's one of the negative connotations with new adult is that everyone automatically assumes that it needs sex to be successful, and it's absolutely not true whatsoever.
Yeah, it's okay if it has it, totally. Like, who doesn't like a little spice? I do. But it's okay if it doesn't. And I know people feel pressured into writing more mature scenes, and you do what's comfortable for you. If you don't feel comfortable writing mature scenes, don't do it. Wait until you're comfortable. If you're doing it for views, then I think there's a point where we might need to reevaluate why we're writing.
Yes.
But I don't write super explicit sex scenes in my books, and they do fairly well. And of course, I get the comments that are like, "I'm bribed." I'm like, well, I'm sorry.
I'm not writing it for you.
Yeah. So just write for yourself. Write what you're comfortable with, but know that new adult can have explicit sex because it's legal within those age ranges.
Yeah, you make such a good point, Anna, about that. And like, so when I first started writing new adult, like the problem with dying has no sex. I mean, there's like a fade to black one kind of scene, but that's not even like, that's not the plot at all. It's not focused on sex. So I definitely think you can write a book that is impactful, but doesn't have sex in it. And for the comfort level thing, that question, I think I didn't even know that kind of book existed until I got on Wattpad, and I'll never forget the first day that I read explicit, and I was like, okay, I didn't know this was a thing. I was like, all right, this is a thing.
Clutching your pearls, like, oh,
just like clutching, yeah. I was like, okay, and that was like wild. I was like, I'll never forget that, and then so anyway, moving on from that, I would say that like if you have an interest in writing explicit scenes into your new adult fiction, read them, right? Read what other people do. And like if you read somebody else's explicit scene and you get that like, oh, I don't like that, what they're doing with that scene, then you know for yourself, okay, I'm not going to do that because I don't like that. So I think that's important, you know, write to what you find comfortable.
I'm dropping in here really quickly just to say also, I think that it is so important to include consent in your book. And I see it so much more often nowadays. And I love it. Like literally with anything. You don't have to go crazy, but especially with those intimate scenes, that's really important to have since we have a lot of which sometimes we wish we didn't because they should not be reading 18 plus content, but we do have young, impressionable people reading these stories, and consent is very, very important.
Yeah, and even if it's a quick check-in, like, is this cool with you, or
yes,
are you with this? And I think to the other point too, like sometimes it's important, like if it's important to you to like be representative of like protection in your stories, right? Like same sex, that's another thing that I think you can include in new adult stories to help kind of normalize that.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So if you want to be traditionally published, how would you label this? How would you write in your query about your book? What would you say about it?
All right. Well, this is where the tweaking of like it's just verbiage, you know. So you would say upper YA or crossover YA. Or if you're writing a college story, it would be called college YA. Barnes & Noble actually posted this on Twitter, you know, last year sometime, like, join our college YA. And everyone's like, this is new adult Barnes & Noble. Just call it what it is. So there are ways to work around it. Just be prepared for traditional publishing to ask you to age it down or age it up, depending on your story. Because like we said, they don't know how to market new adult right now.
And you can always read too in your genre. Like I think of stories like the very first story that comes to my mind when I think of like upper YA is Serpent and Dove, just because it has on page sex and it's YA. And I remember when I got to that chapter in the book and I was like, oh, we're doing this. Okay. But like you can comp stories like that in your query letter. This is Serpent and Dove cross whatever, you know, and kind of give the, or it has the heat level of Serpent and Dove, just to like give people an idea.
But don't stop talking about that new adult needs to be its own category, because one day we will get there. One day we won't have to.
They're on Wattpad, right? We
yes,
right? Stories on Wattpad.
Yes, and they do extremely well indie-wise and self-published. I mean, the Kindle Unlimited new adult section is absolutely endless. I know that's not traditional, but it's still just as much of a novel. So just keep holding them accountable, because we don't want to finesse our query letters. We just want to be upfront.
Exactly. I think we may have time for one more. What books or authors do you think embody your idea of new adult?
Colleen Hoover, baby. I love that woman. Colleen Hoover. I also love Elle Kennedy. She writes really, really fun new adult romances. And yeah, I just like a good old entertaining college romance.
Okay.
Sarah J. Maas is mine. You know, I love A Court of Thorn and Roses series. And it was also the first book I read that made me realize that new adult needed to be a thing. Because, you know, when I first started reading it, it was still, you know, in the young adult section, sorry. And, you know, with all the on page, you know, sex, I mean, it was great, but I wouldn't want a 13-year-old reading it. And so that was the first series that made me realize that, yeah, new adult definitely needs to be a thing.
That's a great question. So I think like all my favorite new adult stories are on Wattpad. And so I'm going to call out like It Burns Within Us by Emily Rice. She's like amazing new adult author. And yeah, just if you go to my profile, I have a billion reading lists, and one of them is called Spicy Romance, and you can check that out. That's like all my new adult stories I love. So yeah, I just think that new adult fiction on Wattpad is explosive, and if you're whatever you're looking for, you can find it here.
Definitely. There's so many new adult stories on Wattpad.
Probably you should all read the stories written by our 3 panelists here. I think we're going to have to wrap it up now. We have 1 minute left. I will ask you to please stay tuned for the next panel, which is TikTok video and books. I just really want to thank everyone for coming, the audience, and all our panelists today. And don't forget to check the reception chat to see who the lucky winner is of our contest. And if we didn't manage to answer your question, and I know there's a bunch that we didn't get to, these guys, go to their booths. Do any of you guys have booths going today?
I have an expo booth.
Yeah?
Yep, I'm actually going to be over there, and then I'll have a meet and greet at 3:00. So I'll be there pretty much all day.
Yeah, I can hop on my expo booth right after this. So
that's perfect. So go talk to these guys. You can do, you know, ask them personal, you know, not personal questions, but
I mean,
if you want, I can try.
I mean, I have no shame.
Questions not in a chat. Anyway, that's all, folks. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at TikTok.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.